Welcome to the Apex, everyone. I'm your host, Zell, and of course, we've got sharp news, and jumping right into that from BladeReviews.com, we have the Boker Patriot review. That's one of those knives that I really don't understand why more people don't pick up. With the price hike from Spyderco recently, the Patriot is cheaper, and in some ways, it's a better knife, especially in steel. We'll talk more about that here in just a minute. From The Truth About Knives, we have the Knife Rights year-end report. Pretty cool to read the progress from Knife Rights for the past year. And then from Knife News, they have chopped in with the White River introducing the premium outdoor cleaver. Cleavers. I still don't understand the outdoor cleaver. Maybe someone can explain it to me, and maybe you guys want me to make some. I mean, I can make some cleavers. Let me know down in the comments. And before we get into video, let's go back and talk about that price hike. Many people have asked about that. Many people have asked about steel. Steel, as far as I know, prices have not really gone up that I can see. And if they did, steel prices going up a few percent is so minor that there's got to be something else going on. I don't know if it's labor. I don't know if it's tooling and abrasives. Abrasives are always expensive. But something is going on. I think it was a bad decision for these companies that decided to raise their prices at the beginning of 2018. I really think they should have waited. I mean, the economy's got a full head of steam. I really think they should have waited to, say, mid-year or late this year, early next year. Let the economy take that head of steam and keep on pushing on. And, well, anyhow, it's been done, and you're going to have to make the decisions. If you don't like what they've done, you know how to let them know. And then, whenever we get into video this week, we have Cedric and Ada Outdoors sliding in with a triple. We've got the Lionsteel SR11 review and the edge retention test for AN58. Don't even know what that steel is. I'm going to have to go watch that one again. I must have been sleeping when I watched it. And speaking of sleeping, we have the Sleipner Steel, edge retention, and other attributes in the Lionsteel SR11. Very interesting on that one. You'll want to see that. And Knife Crazy comes out of the asylum to talk about the StatGear, I can't pronounce it, knife review. It's the Ausus. And he also jumps on the rails with the Hinderer half-track review. EDC Gear Review warms us up with the Massdrop Ferrum Forge Crux full review. And I actually got all of that out. I'm proud of me. And BirdShot IV peppers us with the Microtech Sigil MK6. Very cool, but not quite a keeper. Canadian Cutting Edge slides in with a 3,000 subscriber giveaway video. You got to be entered by tomorrow, so you better get over there or as soon as you're done with this video. And old Nick Shabazz gripes about the Spyderco Vallotton Pocketknife. And Nick's also got a knife gripe over on Knife News, of course. And this week he's talking about these knife companies that are doing this short runs, what I call it. They're making 2, 3, 5, 700 of some knife, and that's it. Never again. And he's also talking about the companies that don't have any iconic design. What do I mean by that? Well, whenever we think about most major knife companies, your Spydercos, your Benchmades, etc., they have some iconic designs. You know, with Buck, you've got the 110, the 501, the 503. With Case, you have the Trapper and various other patterns that are iconic. With Spyderco, you have the Delica and the Endura, and some other patterns of Paramilitary 2. Iconic knives. And these companies keep these knives in their lineup. They refresh them every year or so, except for Buck. And they give them a sprint run of another steel, or they make a minor change to make the knife better. They refine it. And really, guys, in my opinion, that is what's needed to have a successful knife company. These companies that are doing this short runs of something, they're missing out. And this, if you're the knife company, here's what's going to happen to you. If all you have ever done are 2 to 3, 400 knife runs of knives, whenever you quit making knives, whenever you retire or you're gone, if there's nobody to pick up the candle and keep that company running, then your knives become some minor blip in collector history. My personal suggestion for any knife company is if you're a new company and you have some designs that are big hits, don't hinder yourself. Don't lock yourself down by saying, we're only going to make so many of these. Put the knife out there, see how well it sells. If you have a good, solid design, that knife is going to make your company, and it's going to be a foundation you can work on. You know, you have, we'll take Spyderco. How many Delicas do they sell a year? And I know they raised the price on them, but let's talk last year and before, so we don't have to get into that argument. My guess is they sell hundreds of thousands of Delicas every year. It's an iconic design, and that will continue for many years to come. And it has since, what, the 80s? Late 80s, I guess? So they have a foundation of sales that whenever they decide they want to do something like the Rubicon or like the Centophane stuff or anything else, the double bevel, things that might not sell so well, they don't know when they go into it, they can still do it because they've got this base over here that sells real well. Generally with Spyderco, it's the paramilitary series, the military, and the FRN knives that are constant sellers for them. And then they can step out there on the edge and they can make stuff that may not sell so well and not harm the company. And anyhow, that's my suggestion for the knife company. My suggestion for the consumer is be careful of those short-run knives because they're going to run out of parts eventually. You know, any good one is going to have several knives or several bags of parts laying around, waiting for problems and just in case, all that sort of thing. But that stuff's going to get ate up eventually, and at some point, you're just going to have a hunk of titanium or carbon fiber and a piece of steel that doesn't function, or you're going to have to be hunting oddball screws on obscure websites, and that's no fun, believe me, I've been there. So anyhow, if you're a knife company, really think about it before you put yourself in that position. If you're a consumer, not a collector. Collectors, they live out here in this other ether place that's different. If you're a consumer and a knife user, think about it before you buy one of these limited run knives because it could be really bad for you. It's already pretty bad for the company, they just don't know it. And then old Walter Sorrels jumps off in the weeds with custom versus handmade. Now I agree with Walter on custom. You do have to be careful with all this because all of these words in the knife world get bandied about. They don't have real meanings. It's custom, handmade, mid-tech. None of it has a real meaning. It's just, oh, it's so hard to deal with. But I want to talk a little bit about the handmade thing. I have heard from some of you that if you have a jig, it's no longer handmade. I've heard that if you use a file guide, no longer handmade. So I want to put it to you like this. Technology moves forward. Back whenever people started making knives, sure, they beat them out. They had these big round stones water stones that they ran around in a thing of water. And then as technology moved forward, we got electric grinders and we ended up with heat treat ovens and we got mills and lathes and we got all this wonderful equipment that makes the making of a knife sometimes quicker, but more importantly, more precise. You guys demand precision whenever a knife maker is making a knife. And then there's a subset of you guys that scream and yell and fuss if that knife maker is using any of this technology. You've got to make a choice. Do you want the really good knife, or do you want the guy to use no technology? And if we're not going to use technology, if you're going to tell me for instance, that my electric heat treat oven and my Northridge tool grinder with all the various assisting jigs and temper, all the equipment I've made for it to help me make knives, makes them no longer handmade or no longer what you want. Are we going to take away the propane forge from the guy that's forging knives? Are we going to take away his power hammer? Are we going to take away his hydraulic press? That's all technology, guys. Are we going to take away his steel-headed hammer until he makes one using rocks? Are we going to take away his anvil until he casts one using sand and wood? And then how's he... You see where I'm going here? Technology moves forward, and that technology makes better and better knives for you. As that technology comes out of the big knife companies and trickles down to where the average knife maker can afford it, the average knife maker can put it to use, it means better knives for you. Does it also mean maybe that those of us that make knives can make knives a little bit quicker? Yeah, but it also means that you guys demand more. Something else I'd like to mention, I went to this Renaissance fair a while back, and there were a couple of guys selling knives there. There was one guy on one side of the place selling what he called handmade knives. I wouldn't have bought a single knife off his table. I wouldn't even, you know, he had $200, $500, $700, $800 and more on these various swords and other things he had. And I wouldn't have bought a single one of them. Why? Because the bevels were uneven, the thicknesses were uneven, the handles looked like, well, because of the way that he was restricting himself with tools, because I talked to him for a while, it was creating knives that just weren't what I wanted, whether it was small knives or swords. Now, the other guy that was at the other end of the Renaissance fair was making very much similar stuff. But he made no bones about the fact that he was using a 2x72 grinder. He was using a water jet. He was using a mill. He was using a lathe to turn some of the handle parts. He was doing all, he was using the technology available to him to make you, or me, a great knife. Or a great sword, in his case. He was using power hammers and presses and propane forges, or I think he said propane forge, to make the Damascus that he was using. He was using 15N20 and 1084 or 1095, I don't remember which, that came out of a mill somewhere to make great, great stuff. And his is the stuff I would have bought. Is this stuff handmade? Well, he didn't have a handmade sign up there. He just, whatever knives. And still, I would have bought his because technology makes better knives for you, and Nixie's here to say hi. And you have to decide where you're at on that. I'm going to suggest that, like what we're doing, I'm never going to put, maybe on Instagram, but in advertisements, I'm never going to put handmade. I may put custom because custom's this weird, freaky word that kind of slides all over the place. But maybe not even that. Because the knives I make, I'm going to use the technology afforded to me that I can afford to put in my shop, or that I can afford to hire out. If I can afford to hire out laser jetting, if I can afford to hire out some CNC, or have a CNC here in the shop, I'm going to use it. A mill, a lathe, you name it. If I can afford to use it, I'm going to use it to make better items for you. So be careful whenever you silo this handmade, custom, mid-tech, all these things. Do they need definition? Sure, they need a definition, and currently none of them really have one. And I don't expect that they will in the future. But I'm going to stop it there. I'm going to get deep in the weeds. You guys have a wonderful day. For those of you that are sharing this, I really appreciate it. Don't forget to mash that like button. And guys, have a wonderful week, and I will see you next week.